I'm basically going to talk about two major things today. One is, it's been a fascinating year for television. There's been major changes in the ecosystem, major changes at a macro level. I'm going to talk about what that means and why that creates such an opportunity for programmatic to solve some of the problems we're having in fragmentation. And then I'm going to talk about, if you're thinking about buying TV from a DSP or using a technology platform, what are the questions you need to ask as you're exploring that avenue? So the first thing to talk about is some of the broader trends that have happened recently. And these are some stats from Nielsen from last year, that streaming overall is up 60%, while linear TV is down 4%. Now, of course, streaming is working off of a much smaller base overall, so it's easier for them to grow that fast. But I think this is a trend kind of intuitively. Most of us who work in media, who work in technology, who live in New York, are probably already aware of. You're using a Roku, you're using an Apple TV, you're watching a full episode player on your desktop computer or your mobile device. Another big trend you see a lot of headlines about is people cutting the cord, reducing their cable subscriptions. So since 2010, we've now had 5 million people drop their cable subscription. Occasionally you'll see people in the industry say, well, this is overblown. There's still 90, 100 million households that do still have cable. But I look at this from a more of an industry perspective and say, every year for the past 5 or 10 years, cable subscriptions have declined. If you looked at any other industry and said it's declining year over year, again and again, it points to a problem. It points to a need to change. Because along with people cutting cable, there's also people doing what's called cord shaving along with cord cutting. So cord shaving, reducing the size of the bundle, reducing what you want to pay for cable itself. But at the same time, while people are cutting cable, media consumption is on the rise. So if you look across, desktop and mobile video viewing is way up. Connected TV viewing is up almost 40%. TV is down. Radio and print continue to be down as well. The problem here isn't really about TV is dying. It's just watching TV on different devices, watching TV on different screens. One of our major inventory partners, Freewheel, they like to say that it's not about, when you buy TV in 1950, you didn't buy a different TV in the living room and the bedroom and the family room and the dining room. It's all just TV. We often think about it in the same way, which is that these are all just screens. These are all ways to reach viewers who are on high quality content. The overall news that content's being consumed, we're in a golden age of great TV, that's all good news. But it's having huge impacts on some of the existing players in TV. So you may have seen about a month ago, ESPN laid off about 4% of its workforce. And it's a really interesting case study of what's happening to the overall industry. So if you look at most of the analysts who covered ESPN, what they said was ESPN's costs went up, so they're paying a lot more to license rights to air programming from the NBA and the NFL than they did before. So to air the NBA this year cost them $1.4 billion. That's about 2.5 times what it was last year. People recognize the value in live sports. You got to pay more for it. At the same time, ESPN is probably the single most expensive part of your cable package. When you pay your $100 a month for cable, about $6.50 goes towards paying ESPN. They're the most expensive channel that the cable networks then have to pay out the carriage fees to. And so as you look at ways people cutting cable or doing cord shaving, that ESPN is one of the first targets you start to look at. So it's symbolic of the overall shift that's happening within the cable industry. We also have a pretty big measurement problem in TV right now. This is a screenshot from a story that the New York Times Sunday Magazine did a few months ago. And they profiled Comedy Central. And what they found was that Comedy Central is super innovative. If you've watched their shows, they've made it really low barrier to entry for you to watch something on your iPad, on your smartphone, on your computer, on your TV. It's really easy to watch these types of shows on demand. But the ratings don't reflect that. So if you look at Broad City, one of the more talked about comedies in the past couple of years, if you just look at the bottom there in the linear viewing, it's 1.2 million viewers. It doesn't really feel like it moves the needle for Comedy Central. But if you look at their YouTube streams, the people watching it on Hulu, people watching streams on Facebook, some of those are full episodes, some of those are clips. The viewing is a lot bigger. In fact, if you add it up, about 95% of those views are streamed, about 5% are served the old way through linear TV. And they had the president of Comedy Central who said, everyone's talking about Broad City, but by just the Nielsen standard ratings, you wouldn't get the idea that this is a super popular show. Again, this is a fragmentation problem. This is people on different screens, not being totally measured, not being targeted in the same way. And that's a problem I think programmatic is well served to fix. So last couple industry trends here. One of the more interesting mergers recently is ComScore and Rentrak coming together. I think nothing quite says TV is colliding with digital like a TV company, Rentrack, merging with Comscore, a digital company. They're merging to try to challenge Nielsen and say, GRPs that Nielsen measures have been the gold standard for US television for 50 years. We're going to try and change that. Nielsen's approach is instead is to say, hey, we're going to make the same type of move. We're going to acquire Xlate. We're going to acquire a data management platform. Again, the synergy between online data merging with TV measurement to try to fix that problem of how many people are really watching Broad City? How do we count advertising in a place where people are watching across lots of different screens? You also see huge mergers happening in the cable company space. So Comcast tries to acquire Time Warner, doesn't go through. Charter acquires Time Warner, $55 billion deal, one of the largest M&A deals of the entire last year. Altice, a French company, acquires Suddenlink. And you have AT&T merge with DirecTV. What's happening is profits, margins are under pressure for the cable companies. The big will survive. They're merging to get bigger. But M&A isn't the only answer. A week and a half ago, Dish made what I think is a pretty game-changing announcement that they're launching a programmatic exchange. And they're saying, we know that a lot of the cable networks are in decline, a lot of spending here. We're going to roll out something new, which is household addressable targeting based on the data that we have, letting you decide at a household level what ad to serve. This is one of the really first big splashes we've seen in true programmatic TV. We've got a major supply-side partner saying, we're embracing programmatic. We're going to figure out the sales channel conflict. This is a huge indicator of where this industry is headed. I think the running theme here is, if you look at what we at the Trade Desk do for a living, it's to aggregate supply. So when we aggregate supply from 50 different SSPs in display, from all the major mobile SSPs, the video SSPs, all the private marketplaces you can get through Rubicon or Google or others. That's all about aggregating that inventory so that when a major brand or agency wants to find their audience across all those channels, they can do that. That's the problem that TV is facing right now and why it's so important for everyone in this room to start thinking about how does programmatic act as the solution here to some of the problems that TV has. So I want to pivot a little bit to, now that programmatic TV is actually becoming a reality, what are the questions you should be asking? Because programmatic TV is a term generally in this industry that we've bastardized. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. A lot of times you'll sit through a demo with a vendor or talk to a technology company, and there's a big difference between what's in the PowerPoint and what's actually in the technology itself. So I want to try to dispel some of the myths, talk about what's actually real in programmatic TV today, what questions you should be asking. So first is, are you buying programmatic TV self-serve or via insertion order? This is just a screenshot from the Trade Desk platform. And the reason I put it in this presentation is not to sell you on anything, but because whenever we have a meeting with an agency or a brand and we show them this, they're blown away by the fact that programmatic TV is here today. So in the middle there, you'll see A&E Networks. There's an advanced TV run-of-network deal. That's just a deal you can run on your campaign. So if you want to target A&E content on a Roku, on an Apple TV, on a connected TV like a Samsung, on a PlayStation, wherever that app lives, you can run that ad today with a deal ID just running a 15 or 30-second video spot. Same thing applies to other types of connected TV deals, linear broadcast deals. Those things exist today inside some DSPs. In some cases, though, you have middlemen acting as the ones managing TV. And it's really, this becomes a question of, well, if you're going to do a TV buy and you're not going to manage it yourself where you have transparency, the question you need to ask is, who's making the margin? What we've seen in digital is the business model on the left for a lot of the past few years, where an ad network plays middleman, they mark up the media costs, and they provide a service by aggregating a bunch of inventory and data and providing that packaged up to an agency or to a brand, and the agency marks that up. Moving to a transparent model, there's been a lot of pressure to say, advertisers and agencies demanding transparency about what's the actual media cost, what's the tech fee, what's the agency fee. That's been all over the headlines for the past year. As we think about television, there's no way that major TV networks are going to embrace the model on the left-hand side. If you work at ABC or NBC or CBS or any major network spending millions of dollars to create great quality content, there's no way you're going to accept a business model where someone else is making the lion's share of the margin and you're not. There has to be transparency from day one. And I think that's actually held back our industry from moving faster into programmatic TV than we otherwise would have. There's been people acting as middlemen, and it's been losing the trust of some of the bigger players on the supply side in TV. A big question I see, we work with mostly digital buyers. And one thing they struggle with is, well, TV can be confusing. What exactly am I buying? Who's selling it? So I want to talk about what type of video inventory are you actually buying. And we think of it as a spectrum. So on the far left-hand side of the spectrum is what we all buy today in programmatic: digital video, web and mobile video, in-app, full episode players. You go kind of one click to the right, you've got connected TV. So think about a Samsung, an LG. When you buy a Samsung, the first thing it does is it prompts you to say, connect to your Wi-Fi. That becomes addressable. That becomes a data point to say, we can now identify this TV, we can serve more ads in a real-time type environment. You have streaming TV, typically with a device you're using, an over-the-top device, OTT, whether it's Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire, Chromecast, a Sony PlayStation, an Xbox. These are all just devices you're using to say, I don't really love the operating system on my TV. I'm going to use a device instead to get access to inventory. Again, this is all available in programmatic today. A lot of our clients today buy Roku, and they'll buy a run of all the apps on Roku. They'll buy single apps like Sony Crackle. That's all being done with audience targeting today. And then the furthest off from what we mostly are used to doing is linear TV. Local broadcast stations, cable networks. And this is the furthest away from addressability. This is kind of the toughest problem to solve, but it's also where a lot of the larger dollars live. Another nuance that I see some of our programmatic clients struggle to get their head around is, well, who's selling the TV inventory that I'm buying? In digital, we're used to having a single publisher coming through an SSP or an ad exchange, and that's the transaction that you're going to do. In TV, it's a little bit different. CBS sells a lot of its ad space directly. Comcast, a cable operator, they get a portion of the minutes per hour. They can sell directly. If you're using Dish Network, they're selling a portion of the ad inventory. If you're watching an app like Crackle themselves, they're selling the ad inventory. The local broadcast station, so the LA ABC affiliate, KTLA5, they get a portion of the hour that they can sell. And then to add more to the mix, the device manufacturers. So it's whether a TV manufacturer like Samsung or an OTT box manufacturer like Roku, they're getting into the inventory game and selling ads as well. So again, this is a story about fragmentation. All these different players are selling inventory. It's our job as a DSP to say, how do we aggregate all of this? So when you want to find that most important audience across these different channels, wherever they're accessing content, you can do that. Linear faces real challenges with addressability. This is a map of all the DMAs in the United States, and it's shaded based on income levels, where the darker the shade is, the higher the income you're talking about. This is a lot of times how TV is bought. You're not usually buying on a cookie or a device ID or even a single spot. You're buying oftentimes an entire DMA. You're buying maybe a day part. Sometimes you're buying a program. But in digital, we're spoiled. We have cookies. You can target a single user. You can target a single device ID. You have total control. TV is not that way. It's changing. As everything goes streaming, that is starting to change. But there will, for the next foreseeable future, there'll be a lot of TV inventory that you have to buy this way. And it becomes a question of, well, how do you leverage data on top of this to make better decisions, knowing that some of your decisioning is a little bit limited? I think Rentrak is one of the really interesting companies in our space. I talked about their merger a little bit earlier, but I think of Rentrak as kind of like the live ramp of the TV world. They've got millions of set-top boxes collecting data about what TV shows do people watch, what's the behavior in this exact household. So you can take it. We've had clients of ours who will take a first-party data set and say, I'm a large bank. Here's every one of my customers that I have a cookie on in my DMP. Rentrak, can you match that to cable boxes and tell me about the behavior of those people? That's happening today. That's one of the first big offline to online mappings between TV behavior and digital behavior. I think speaks to where things are headed next. If you look at how programmatic grew so quickly over the past 5 years, it wasn't really about automation. It was about audience. It was about saying, if you're an advertiser and you want to reach your first-party audience or go find more customers who look like that first-party group, you do that using data from a DMP. Rentrak can help function as the DMP of the TV world. It is a great bridge between our two worlds. This, I think, is one of the biggest opportunities for everyone in this room, which is, how do you think about cross-device targeting? One of our largest clients is a large agency, and they work with a major CPG brand. And the head of that agency said to me, I know that our viewers, or I know that our customers of this brand, they're on Roku. They're on an Apple TV. They're not watching cable. They've already shifted behavior. But the problem is I can't measure anything. I can't measure the GRPs from that Roku. I can't go back to the CMO of that CPG company and tell them, how do you compare apples to apples with the way you've been buying TV for the past 50 years? Solving that measurement problem is a huge part of what has to happen to unlock the dollars to move into more programmatic TV. The other opportunity that this presents here is, if I think about a Roku has a device identifier on it, just like a mobile phone does, just like a cookie on a browser. It's just another map on a user mapping table as you're linking between devices. In other words, as you're thinking about cross-device, a Roku can be another device in that set, which helps you solve a huge problem, which is looking at, I buy TV, and I don't know how many people saw the ad and then took an action, whether it's buying something online or going to a store. As we move towards a streaming world where there's more device IDs, that converges. You can start saying, I served this household 20 ads, then they bought something on a laptop. Then I know from some place-based behavior, they went to the store from lat long and other data sets. You can solve the problem of, majority of my budget is still in TV. Is it actually working? What's working? And the last point I'll touch on is, I think, probably the biggest divide between the digital programmatic world and the TV world, which is, are you buying upfront or are you buying on the spot market? For the most part, when we buy in programmatic and digital, we're buying the spot market. We're looking at millions of ads every second. We're saying, these are the ones I want, these are the ones I don't want. There's no guarantee, and I'm just buying as I see fit. That's starting to change already in digital, where with the rise of private marketplaces, with deal IDs, you have more large advertisers and large publishers saying, I'll commit for the year, I'll commit $10 million, but I want more decisioning power over which ads I'm getting as part of that commit. I think that same thing is going to happen in TV. If you think about a Super Bowl ad, and I mostly put this up here because I'm a Patriots fan, so that's the real reason. But if you think about a Super Bowl ad, it's never going to be bought and sold probably in a real-time auction. It's too risky. If you're an advertiser, you're not going to spend $3 million creating a spot only for a chance of actually running the ad. If you miss that auction, you don't get to run until next year. That's not an acceptable outcome for most advertisers. And if you're NBC and you paid a lot of money for the rights to the Super Bowl, there's no way you're going to take the chance to run an auction in real time on inventory that's valuable. So I think what's going to have to happen in the TV space is, again, this convergence of everything you know from the spot market and applying it to the upfront market, saying, I will make that long-term annual commit to a TV network, but the buyer wants more control to say, we're going to use everything we've learned in programmatic, all the tools we have to decide about audience, about geo, about location, to make better decisions about the inventory we get. Thank you guys so much for your time.